Hey guys, I'm going to be doing a speech today on Obama versus Reagan, Slugfest 2012. Just kidding. No, I'm going to talk about their effects in public speaking and who did a better job from being president, speaking in public, and getting their point across. I have my own personal opinion, but I'll just let the facts do the talking on this one. Real quick though, I got this little video right here for you. It's pretty cool, and I thought demonstrated great presidentship.
There was once upon a time that to be a Republican in this area of the country felt a little bit like being Gary Cooper in High Noon, outnumbered in a big way. But I remember the story of a fellow who was running for office as a Republican, and he was in a rural area and that wasn't known to be Republican, and he stopped by a farm to do some campaigning, and when the farmer heard he was a Republican, his jaw dropped and he said, "Wait right here till I go get Ma. She's never seen a Republican before." So he got her, and the candidate looked around for a podium from which to give his speech, and the only thing he could find was a pile of that stuff that Bess Truman took 35 years trying to get Harry to call fertilizer. So he got up on the mound, and when they came back, he gave his speech. And at the end of it, the farmer said, "That's the first time I ever heard a Republican speech." And the candidate said, "That's the first time I've ever given a Republican speech from a Democratic platform."
Now, Reagan, known for this, he did stuff like this all the time. But what Obama and Reagan have in common is they both knew their audience well, did a lot of background research, they both used humor well, and they both used stories, and they were both really good speakers. They also faced the similar economic crisis and unrest overseas. Now, I'm not going to, by any ways, compare Libya to the USSR, but they both had those trials. Reagan was stood apart. He was called the Great Communicator. It was a term he actually coined himself. He gave it to himself during an interview, and he was also a great storyteller. He used the stories to liven up the audience, or even to poke fun at his opponents. He would oftentimes tell stories about jokes or something that he heard from other people in other countries. Towards the end of his last stint in office, he had his sources gather stories that were jokes that people were telling in Russia about their own leaders and stuff. And he used his wit as a weapon, which was pretty cool. Sam Donaldson, who was an ABC reporter in the 80s, he asked him at a press conference one time, in talking about the continuing recession, you blamed your mistakes on past events and you blamed them on the Congress. Does any of the blame belong on you? Reagan answered him by saying, "Yes, because for many years I was a Democrat." He just dismisses them with little statements like that. One of the stories he liked to tell about Russians was that he said there was a Russian and an American, they were both talking, and the American said, "In my country, I can go into the White House, I can come up to the president's desk, I can bang my fist on his desk and say, 'Mr. President, I don't like the way you're running this country.'" The Russian said, "Well, I can do that too." The American was like, "You can do that?" He's like, "Of course, I can go into the official offices, come up to the commissar and say, 'Mr. Commissar, I don't like the way President Reagan's running his country.'" It was just little stories like that that would get his audience started and going. Reagan was considered a master at this. During his acceptance speech in 1980, he harkened back to America's first days. 360 years ago in 1620, a group of families dared to cross a mighty ocean to build a future for themselves, he said, defiantly linking his the past to the current, linking the past to the future with his appeal, which is, but he liked to do that. He liked to tell stories of what happened in back in the day and link them to currently what was going on to kind of give his audience an idea. And that was from the Great Speakers book, which was written by Colleen O'Connor. But let's move on to his opponent in this area. Obama is kind of different. He likes to use lyricism in his writing, which means he kind of writes his speeches as like songs, and he uses repetition in that. And he also uses the way he speaks and the way he alters his tone and creates pauses. It kind of has a rhythm to it, and that's why it appeals in today's standards. Barack Obama clearly and fully owns his words and has been known to study punctuation, and he's been known to study one single word extensively so that it comes across in his speech accurately. Barack Obama also knows his audience very well. No president has been able to use rhythm, body language, pauses, punctuation, and the enunciation of his voice and tone to sing like Dr. King used to. That's what the New York Observer reported. A linguist, Jeff Nuremberg, says, to see Obama's elements of speeches, he tend to lend themselves to a song. He said the president is, in his opinion, the third best speaker in the modern era since 1933. I kind of disagree with that. But one really cool fact I found about him is that he uses all 4 languages, and I didn't realize 4 languages that could be used in one speech, but that's visual, auditory, digital auditory, and kinesthetic. And basically, it comes down to the way he speaks, the hand motions he makes, and when it all ties together, he's able to really speak to his audience and clearly captivate them. Another thing that we're talking about is he tends to pull a lot from John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy, and his speechwriters do the same. He likes to mimic them, and even the way he moves around on stage. He'll point to one side and then fall to another just to try and keep the audience in. And it takes a lot of what Dr. King said and repeat that same thing, because Dr. King would repeat the same phrase, and he does the same in the same tone with the same movements in a lot of his speeches. But moving on to the main point of this, I feel like Obama, well, and sort of the facts, Obama is less effective. He's recently been dubbed the Great Spin Doctor, and who gave him that title was none other than our own Chuck Norris, who is a columnist, if you didn't know that. He wrote in his column on townhall.com that Obama can spin a fact, and even though it's wrong and untrue, it's almost believable. Then he sends his minions out to spin the same fact, hoping that if we hear it enough times, we finally believe it. The attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi, Libya, is a prime example. Even though Obama knew from the moment of the assault that it was just a terrorist attack, he didn't let the American people know. We recently learned that a drone was recording the attack in real time, and our president was watching it from the Situation Room. It is clear that he chooses to deceive the American people deliberately and saying it was a mob protest and blaming it on a video that no one had ever seen. Chuck Norris reported that in his own column. I didn't know that. Researching this was pretty cool. It's apparent in his recent debates that he likes to make elaborate points and evade questions, and he's kind of taken a downward turn since when he became elected. His inauguration speech was great, and then from then on, I feel, and so what I've seen, that it's kind of gone downhill from there. He's kind of started to become more elusive in what he's saying. But in conclusion, I feel like there's no doubt that both of these gentlemen were great speakers and are great speakers. But as a presidential auditor, I believe that Obama's late predecessor, Ronald Reagan, was the better of the both.